looking forward. Oh,
So start, go ahead.
yeah, just looking forward to interacting with all of you.
Thanks, Olga. Thank you for the recording reminder. And last but not least, John, go ahead.
Uh, Good afternoon, John Torrance. I'm actually based in Connecticut, working for Fuel Cell Energy, which is an alternative energy company that's been in business for over 50 years. I started my career in the alternative energy business for various different OEMs, and I've also worked in specialty chemicals and electronics specifically. I have a background in chemical engineering, and pretty much spent the majority of my career trying to cross the commercialization chasm with various different technologies, mostly for emerging markets. And very excited to talk about the product management role that I'm currently filling at Fuel Cell Energy and sharing some of the experiences that I've had with Jerry, who was actually we were linked through a consulting engagement that he fulfilled for us at Fuel Cell.
Great. Yeah, we're grateful, John, for you to be here to bring in the employer perspective on when and why would you seek out fractional leadership. Um,
Perfect.
so the next one, some of you touched on this already, but specifically for Jerry, Vicky, and Olga, how did you get into independent product work in the first place? Go ahead, Jerry.
So yeah, so I'm fairly far into my career. And I got to the point where I really wanted to have more control over my time, where I could decide, pick and choose what I wanted to spend my time on. And I had the luxury given being at this point in my career to do that. And so that's how I made the transition into fractional work. Just to kind of add on to maybe what I didn't mention earlier along those times, I tend to focus in a couple different areas, actually three different areas. Robotics and industrial automation is one area. Audio and music tech is another area, and then consumer electronics and IoT. Now, I've worked in areas beyond that, but those tend to be focus areas for me. Another thing is I tend to work more with executives. So some of the fractional work might be for like projects, do the specific project in this very focused area. A lot of the work that I'm doing is more working with the C-level team, either to set new product strategy, drive the business in a new direction at the behest of, let's say, the private equity firm that's invested in the company, or things like that. So there's a whole range, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go through this. There's a whole range of ways that you can provide fractional work. Mine tends to be more at the strategic executive level.
Okay. Vicky or Olga?
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah, that's a really good thing to call out, I think, because when I think about fractional work, a lot of times that's like similar to like consulting work, right? Like you're giving, I don't know, any number of days of your week dedicated to this company, doing hands-on work, helping them come up with a different strategy or breaking into a new market, like whatever that looks like. A lot of my focus these days is on the coaching aspect, and we'll talk more about this later. But I just want to make one distinction here. Like when I say like coaching, I'm talking less about outsourcing that work to me, that I deliver a document, a strategy, a presentation. But coaching is to me more about growing the company's internal product management capabilities. So that is a lot of like sometimes like one-on-one sessions with leaders, with various PMs, and sometimes broader trainings for like product teams and the teams that they touch. Anyways, going back to the original question, how I got into it. I had always really enjoyed like mentoring and coaching people when I was an employee. And when I looked back like on my weeks, the things that really brought me the most joy was like seeing the changes in others, in other people. I knew I just didn't have the bandwidth to start a side business. So I put in my notice, give myself 6 months to try to get this business started. And when I was thinking, I told myself, it's like I could always go back to the corporate job, or if it didn't work out, there's always like some other alternative paths. Now I'm a few years in. I'm enjoying this so much. I hope I get to do this for the rest of my career. We'll see how it goes. And then Pamela, you said about like focus area. So I currently focus more on the coaching aspect, right? Like growing the company's internal product capabilities, instead of doing like hands-on consulting work that is still available. I'm just not focusing on that as much right now. So my goal is really like transforming their product practices or strategies to, both successfully deliver these outcomes that solve customer problems, but also really align with their business goals. So in order to do coaching, sometimes I need to perform like an assessment upfront to see where things are at, and then like do training for broader teams to make sure everybody is aligned, especially with like globally distributed teams.
Yep. Thanks, Vicky.
Yeah, and I don't know if people like how you want to take questions. If people like have questions, you can like chat me or you can like raise your hand. Like, yeah, Pamela, how do you want people to do that?
I think we'll start with like putting questions in the chat because we have a set of questions that people submitted. So it's
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
from this audience, and I'll
perfect.
either pick them up as we go, depending on the conversation, or we'll leave them time at the end. But yeah. And Olga, yeah.
Yes. So, how did I get into independent product work? That's a really good question. I was actually laid off from my last full-time role. And while I was under a lot of pressure interviewing and looking for a full-time position, a couple of small projects came my way. I was recommended to smallish jobs by my previous colleagues. And I immediately saw an opportunity in that. And I immediately changed my status on LinkedIn from open to work to working as a product design consultant. Why not, right? While I was still interviewing for full-time positions. But as time went by, and as my client list grew, I eventually started realizing that I'm actually enjoying it, um, doing exactly that. And then I eventually stopped looking for a full-time position. So the risk is always there, but I can always go back to full-time. I definitely enjoy doing consulting work because of the schedule. I specialized mostly working with early and growth stage startups, industry and agnostics, but mostly B2B businesses. And I usually work with a company who doesn't have a designer and design support and who is looking to improve their current platform usability. Sometimes it's somebody who doesn't have any type of platform and they're just building from scratch and they're just trying to visualize concepts of what their product might look like so they can go and pitch to investors. But depending on the size of an organization that I'm involved with, sometimes I work closely with the company founders and who actually sometimes work also as their engineering leads. So the company CMO and customer success leads. Other times I work closely with product managers if the company is larger. So there's usually like one product manager per company and a lead engineer. And I provide any type of services from design strategy to uh, visual design to interacting prototyping, sometimes branding, from building branding from scratch and improving existing platform usability.
Thanks, Olga. Yeah, and I love your perspective around reframing the open to work to becoming your own, starting your own independent work. Kind of reframing that perspective helps a lot. So we kind of segueing into, you all talked about the types of projects or customers that you work with. I think the biggest question we got was, how do you find opportunities and clients? Do you work with a staffing firm or do you use a specific platform that helps you find prospects?
Yeah. So I can speak to that. And that is the magic question, right? That's probably the toughest part of the job is finding find the business. You want to make sure that there's a continuous stream of business coming in. Um, much of my business comes through a combination of LinkedIn and trade shows. A lot of business is coming through LinkedIn. And one piece of advice I can give you is if you're going to go into fractional, your LinkedIn should sing and dance. You should put in everything in there. You should, if you ever got an A+ on your homework assignment in kindergarten, that goes in there. Right? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you really want to make sure that LinkedIn is singing because a lot of people start there first, right? I also go to trade shows in the verticals that I mentioned earlier that I focus in. It's good to meet people there to keep your contacts fresh, et cetera. So very helpful. One book that I think you should all get if you're serious about this. This has been amazing for me. It's called How to Win Client Business by a guy named Doug Fletcher. All right. How to Win Client Business When You Don't Know Where to Start, a rainmaking guide for consulting and professional services. This book has been very helpful, has a lot of great ideas, but it really comes down to keeping all of your contacts fresh and being a helpful person to them and someone who's really trying to help them in what they're trying to accomplish in any way, shape, or form. So other ways to get business. Oftentimes, jobs have come into me through private equity firms and through recruitment firms. So if there's a recruiting firm that's trying to find an executive for a company, and that's how I met John Torrance, right? They were looking for someone to head up their engineering function, realized they needed product management as well to make sure that the engineers were working on the right thing once they had the head of that part of the group come in. So they brought me in on a temporary basis. So recruitment firms to fill in a role while they're looking to hire for that role. And then also private equity firms, often when they've invested in a startup where the investment thesis isn't working well and they need someone to come in and fix it. Like, how do we get this product to be doing the right things so we can actually sell a lot of them? That's another way that business comes to me.
Okay. Are these private equity firms or recruitment firms also finding you through LinkedIn? Is that how the outreach happens?
Oh yeah, through LinkedIn. Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, make your LinkedIn beautiful and perfect. You really got to have it singing.
Yeah. Okay. Vicky or Olga, anything to add to that, or is it similar
I think
channel?
that's a great list. I think one thing to keep in mind is like what kind of clients you end up taking on and like who they will tell you to like who their friends are. When I take on clients, I want to make sure like I'm actually the best fit for this job and I deliver above expectations. So then like they will tell their friends, they will be like happy about the result. So like referral is a big part. But I think a lot of the referral, the art within that comes from who are the clients you end up taking on and how good of a job you can do with that. Another thing is also like events, either like speaking at events or like attending events. Those are also good places that I have had clients reaching out afterwards and having a conversation about how I might be able to help them.
Thank you. I see a question in the chat around how do you make your LinkedIn profile sing and dance to your commentary. A similar question in that realm is like, how do you build your brand and market it? So if you have any tips around that.
Yeah. So LinkedIn has a lot of things that you can fill in, and I would encourage you to do that, right? Take advantage of all of the different areas that they have. If you're going to put any images in, make sure they're good, high quality images, right? This is your professional statement to the world. You want to look very buttoned up, and so use it to its fullest extent. They have areas to fill them in. Another thing, I happened across this. LinkedIn was at a trade show. They were actually by South by Southwest when I went there once, and I went to their booth, and they were actually looking at your LinkedIn profile and advising you on how to make it better. If you ever see them at an event, go visit them. They might be doing the same thing. They actually helped me out with a couple of things that I had messed up and didn't realize it. So, yeah.
Vicky, anything to add? See, I'm muted.
For building and marketing.
Yeah.
So I think there are some really good general advice that we've been hearing here. I think people should all consider this. I think fundamentally, like all of you here who are either, product management experts or at least know what product management really is, are curious about it, like act as the product manager of your own product. Like I think I may throw this question back to the audience. Like, how do you come up with the strategy for a new product you're bringing to the market? What are the considerations that you have? How do you analyze the market? How do you think about how your potential customers view you and view your alternatives, right? Like all those questions apply, which is why I love this work so much, because that's why I was in product management in the first place. I think for probably all of you here who enjoy product management, being like fractional and independent, or being a product coach could be a really exciting part if you apply all those same skills to this new product you've got. Um, so yeah, so I would say like that as the most important thing, right? There isn't gonna be like my strategy probably isn't gonna work for your strategy, but I'm still happy to share. So for me personally, when I first started off, I found it really helpful to have a niche. I was already in the scientific product management community, so I started with this niche of like, how do we apply tech product management best practices in a scientific setting? Then after a while, kind of branched out a little bit outside when people from edtech or fintech, etc., kind of started reaching out for help. And then I knew like, oh, like, other people outside of this particular niche also valued my expertise. So right now I'm splitting my time between like biotech startups and like Fortune Global 500 companies. But you ask me again in 6 months, that's going to look different. But that's just a small thing with like having a little bit of a niche helps people remember you. They're gonna meet lots of people who say, I can help you with strategy, I can help you with the roadmap, I can help you with hiring, right? But having something that helps you be memorable, is probably gonna help you get this off the ground.
Yeah. And I like your advice of thinking of yourself as your product. So you are the
Yes.
product in this case of your business. So how would you build a strategy around yourself and your expertise? And I found even if you're job searching, so not even in a
Yes.
fractional context, the more focused you are, the more successful your job search, rather than kind of throwing like a wide net of things. So I like the advice of like being more strategic and focused and finding your niche like for yourself. Switching gears a little bit to talk about kind of what I call like the state of the market. Actually, I'm curious to hear from you, John, as an employer of a fractional work. When is fractional a good option for an employer, or when do leadership seek out external product help from your experience, maybe working with Jerry or in general?
Yeah, I think that it all started with a need to transform the organization, bringing in the outside expertise needed to really chart. Number one, to find the leadership, as Jerry mentioned, we were in need of a redesign in the organizational structure, which went from a leadership standpoint all the way down to how we were operating our product development process. We did not have a product management function. And it was critically necessary to really pivot the organization away from some of the legacy products that certainly had success from a technology standpoint, but not a commercial standpoint. So we were struggling to get to break even and profitability, and really needed to have that I would say critical eye on where we actually could bring the technology to market with a good product market fit. And that required a lot of discipline around understanding the market, and then deriving that market requirement into a product requirement that then we could use to drive the process. The other challenge is that to do it right, there's so many different functions and subject matter experts required to really get all the pieces at the beginning of the product lifecycle management. So we found, not just with Jerry, but with others, to get that subject matter expertise quickly and on a part-time basis through consulting was really important, because you can spend a lot of time searching for full-time expertise. And that really doesn't help with the velocity of trying to get things done quickly and solve problems real time. So we found that finding that subject matter expertise when it's needed, using it for when it's critical, and then not having to commit to it necessarily full time has been very agile and flexible in our ability to pivot the organization in a different direction.
Got it. So almost like move faster. Seems like velocity is a big part of it as well.
It is a big part. And when you're dealing with the inertia of, existing org designs, biases, historical perspectives, it helps to bring in that outside perspective to really push things. You can get bogged down sometimes in the analysis paralysis, where if you can bring in that subject matter expertise wherever it is in the life cycle, it really can help break that logjam and keep things moving.
Got it. Thank you. I'm curious from the other panelists if that's been also your experience on the types of projects you're getting. Are those the times when transformation is needed, or maybe again, there's no product management team internally, or folks want to move faster and not get bogged down? Is that typically when you're getting sought out?
I think that's usually when they are asking, personally, N of one, when they're asking for like a few days per week of my time. Like usually like 4 days, which is a lot when you think about this, because you really don't have a lot of bandwidth to devote to other things at that point. So I think that's typical. I have experienced that before. And I think a different scenario for me, just because I do more coaching, um, when the company puts a focus on like growing their internal capabilities rather than like, you know, bringing somebody in to quickly deliver, like to quickly improve velocity or quickly deliver outcomes, like whatever that looks like. That's when I get asked to do like product coaching, right? The product coaching is really interesting because like my goal for these situations is actually to work myself out of a job, because that's a sign of success, right? If after engagement they don't need me, they know how to solve these problems and they know how to use those muscles we built together for their next challenge, like that is a great sign. And going back to the referral idea we talked about earlier, right? Like they will say nothing but praises for my work, which brings in additional clients. So for that type of work, I think me personally, that is more like equipping the product team, with like not just the best practices, but how do you apply these in your specific situation? That could be like prioritization, delegation, assessing product opportunities structurally, right? Like any of these product D topics. Um, yeah. And in terms of the different levels here, like sometimes it's like growing product leadership capability internally, right? So that's like coaching the CPO and the C-suite in general. Growing product team capabilities. So that's more like coaching, training PMs and their managers. And I think the third category would be like evaluating the state of the organization. Like, are we in the build trap? Do we have a path to get out of there? Do we have alignment across globally distributed teams? Like those kind of things. Yeah. So that's everything John said. I think that's true, and just adding a different flavor on the like coaching side.
Got it. Because your focus is to come in and kind of up level the existing team so that they can move forward on their own, or kind of fill in some of these like skill gaps.
Yeah. For coaching work, definitely. But like for consulting or fractional work, you just deliver on what you agree upon. Yeah.
So in my case, it kind of depends on the company size. Typically with smaller companies, it's earlier stage. I'm getting involved right up front when they're trying to figure out what should this product be? How do we reach this market? With very large companies, it tends to be the opposite, where it's much more about keeping the wheel turning of product management. How are we driving the organization? What processes are we setting up to make sure that we're developing the products that we need to be successful as an organization? Also, there's kind of the mid-size range where oftentimes they've headed down a path and realized, this isn't going to work. So I'm coming in and doing the work that they should have done up front. So now it's time to fix this and actually dig in and understand that market and turn around the path that they were already on. And pretty much across the board, there's always some amount of product strategy and product roadmap work, right? So either at a very specific product level or across the organization. So I'd say it kind of depends on the company size.
Got it. John, if I'm curious on your perspective on, you kind of talked about when it makes sense to bring someone in. Do you see any risks for bringing someone fractionally rather than building certain like expertise or skill set internally?
Yeah, I do think that there is the risk where the is Vicky said, making sure that you actually put yourself out of the job, the consultant doesn't become embedded in the organization, become the crutch. I think that is a risk sometimes. And we've seen that happen as well, where somebody is so good and does such a good job, but really isn't working themselves out of the role and making sure it's sustained through the organization and becomes more institutionalized. We've had that challenge for sure. So I think there's always that mindset you need to have that this should be finite, and it should be very defined scope wise if that's the intent, and working towards getting it sustained and institutionalized, as I like to say.
Got it. Thank you. One question we received is that a lot of the fractional roles that are out there, and also based on this discussion, tend to be for more senior, experienced leaders. A big part of the BPA membership are more individual contributors, maybe more junior folks. Olga, I think this might be a good question that for you is like, are there opportunities out there for people that are more individual contributors or focus on more IC work, or maybe folks that are more junior in their career?
Yep. Who did you aim that at? I can answer that.
Yeah, you can follow up. I'll start. Go ahead, Olga.
Yeah, I believe that absolutely there's an opportunity for junior people, especially in design. I'm going to speak from the product design perspective. I think the sooner we try this out, the quicker we will learn whether this is a good fit for us or not, and whether we can be successful at that or not. I definitely feel that I got into this at the right time for myself. Um, but at the same time, I can see how junior designers could be more proactive and reach out to and pitch themselves as part-time team extensions of other companies, and also try to specialize in something specifically early in their career to make sure they bring value with whatever they're trying to sell themselves as. Um, and partnering with more senior designers and trying to look for mentorship and trying to kind of grow as you go, and just being very proactive and learning on the job is just incredibly fulfilling, and also it helps build confidence.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
sorry, I heard some. Go ahead, Vicky.
no, you go. Oh, you.
No, I was in a plus, and I remember, Olga, when we first talked, you mentioned like when you first embarked on this journey, you were not like you were taking small projects, bigger projects, like whatever projects align with your skills or you were interested in doing. So not being afraid of putting yourself out there and picking up projects as they come your way. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, one thing to add to this is that I personally see it for myself as an opportunity to learn new skills, even if I'm not familiar with something, or if I really want to get into something, I'll jump on it and I'll be more flexible with my hours, but I will spend some time to learn this new piece of craft that I might not be very familiar with to broaden my expertise. And that's definitely a huge opportunity for me personally.
I love that. I was just gonna say that I totally agree. Definitely think there are opportunities for like more junior folks. I have been in conversations with startups, usually like pretty early. They're bringing their like first, product hire or sometimes design hire. And there is always, especially on the product side, less on the design, but especially on the product side, within the company, sometimes there's a lack of alignment of like, do we actually need a full-time product person? Like, our money's tight. Is this where we want to spend? Should we do marketing instead? Right? Like, there's always that conversation. And I know companies in these situations where they decided, let's go with a fractional person on the more junior side, so the price is right for where they are at and what they're able to spend. And actually it was like incredible result. Like some of them turn into, permanent roles, or some of them turn into like more uh, positions with like higher titles and higher pays, right? I think there are lots of these opportunities. I see them the most in the startup world. Yeah, I just want to add to what Olga said.
Okay. Jerry, I think you wanted to add your perspective on bringing in junior folks on a project. Yeah.
Yeah, just really briefly. So sometimes I'm working on a program where there's strategic work all the way down to very tactical work. And it doesn't make sense in some cases for me to do the tactical work when they could pay someone else less money, because it's pretty detailed stuff that doesn't require a lot of experience. In that case, I brought in more junior product managers to do that work. And so that's an opportunity. Not working for me, but I'll introduce them to the company, or actually in one case got them hired into the company to do that work. But that's another opportunity as well.
Got it. And how are you finding talent or folks to bring in? Also through LinkedIn?
It's typically people that I know, that I've worked
Got it.
with before. Again, not all, but a lot of the work has happened in the greater Boston area, and I've been here my whole career, so I know a lot of people in the tech space in the Boston area, especially with companies more focused on hardware. And so, if you're doing hardware, it's relatively easy for me to find someone who's done that kind of thing before and can help out.
Got it. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, and I already see some questions in the chat around kind of the operations of running your own business. I'm curious if folks can contribute into how do you establish your contract structure? How do you price your services, as much as you're comfortable sharing?
I can start if everybody's okay with that. So I would like to speak from the contract creation perspective. And for me, it's definitely an evolving process. Where the very first contract that I wrote was a lot of Googling, um, asking ChatGPT for advice, and so on. Um, and then always sharing a draft with the client to get their feedback on that, to make sure that um, everything is clear from my end and from their end, so there's no questions that are uncovered in the contract. So I definitely feel like from where I started in the very beginning to where I am right now, my contract writing has evolved significantly. Some of the feedback that I got was from roles within the companies, like um, chief legal officer, which was really helpful because, I personally don't have any contacts that could advise me on from the legal perspective. So that was actually like one of the last thing that I worked with, and I feel like the contract process has really gotten better for me personally. And from the perspective of making the decision in the beginning, when you're actually just being approached by the client, whether and learning about the project, whether you would like to charge for this project per project versus per um, hour on an hourly basis. I've done a few projects um, per project priced out, just to share a little bit about that. That was something that was very small, and I could see that the client really wanted to get some value out of hiring me, but at the same time, they were on a tight budget. So I saw it as an opportunity to just, hey, let's just do it. I'll put it as an experience in my portfolio. And and that worked out really well. Um, and there's always referrals, as we know from people that work in different industries, and that's definitely a big plus for me as a designer um, to be referred by my previous clients to somebody they know. Um, but from the contract perspective, again, I think it's very important to be clear from as a designer on what type of work you're doing and what type of work you're not doing as part of this contract. So just being very clear on that in the document, everything has to be documented as much as possible. But at the same time, I would say it's important to build in a way to handle scope changes in the contract because sometimes there's more opportunities that might come your way and you can adjust time and fees if the work grows. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Um, and then also, very important to spell out all the payment requirements, making sure that you're clear on when, as a design consultant, you would like to get paid, how often, how much, and what happens if the payment is late, to make sure you protect yourself from any type of issues. And then one thing that one quick tip that I would like to share is that I never try to tie my final payment to the client's launch date because you never know when it's going to be. It just so making sure upfront that you're going to be paid as you go and not necessarily as they launch the changes that you've been addressing through your designs.
Okay. Thank you for the detailed tips. That's very specific, helpful advice. Thanks, Olga. Jerry or Vicky, anything else to add, like around pitfalls, around pricing or contracting and protecting yourself as an independent entity, in addition to what Olga shared?
I think she shared a great amount of details. In terms of protection, like having an LLC as a basic layer of protection, is worth considering. You should evaluate the risk for yourself, to see what that means for you, because you do it is an expense, the business expense, right? Um, in terms of contracts, depending on the work, like for my coaching work, I actually try to stay away as much as I could from hourly billing, because that kind of puts you and the client on the opposite ends of the table. Do you want good results? And every time a decision it needs to be made, there needs to be like a renegotiation. So for coaching, all my individual coaching is like a package base. Like this is the amount of sessions you get and whatever additional things that I would do. So that we make that decision once and we like really focus on the work rather than the hours every time. Um, what else? If anything else come up to mind, I'll chime in.
Yeah, I would say it kind of depends on the size of the business too. Typically with smaller businesses, you can work to your contract. But when you're working with a huge company, oftentimes they'll like, nope, working with our
Yeah,
company.
you don't even have a contract. I know.
Right.
You're an employee.
So it kind of depends on the size of the company that you're working with. And you have to be flexible. Obviously, there's always got to be, you take a risk, right? If you move away from your contract, which generally is designed for your needs, you take the risk that you might get stuck in a bad place. So it's important to know the customer and trust them and have them trust you, right? It's all about trust in both directions, unquestionably. I've been really fortunate. I've had great customers, so I haven't had any issues with that, even when I've signed their contract as the big company.
Okay. Another kind of operational question is like how many engagements do you work on at once? And how do you, I guess, limit your mental time fractionally, like for each specific client and context switch throughout the week?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, oh, go ahead.
No, you start. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, for me, like for every engagement that I'm about to sign, I like calculate basically how much brain space, how much time they require, and use that to decide like whether I have the bandwidth, once I have a good understanding of the problem and what we're doing. I will say that when I had to say no for the first time, it really wasn't easy. Like, right, you're running your own business, clients want to work, and you say, oh no, like this is not going to work out. But I just needed to constantly tell myself, like, this is better than the alternative. When you take on too much or you can't devote the amount of attention that you should devote to your clients, then your business is going to go downhill at some point. With that, like, I generally strive for longer contracts. I see like lots of experts in the chat. People, they're probably more experts here, but and everybody has different opinions on this. But for me personally, I strive for longer contracts because building product management capabilities takes multiple like repetitions for them to truly internalize. Like they would internalize once, and then some crisis happen, they kind of like ready to go back to the old way, but then like you stay for a longer period of time. When I started off, the contracts were shorter and the clients like just wanted to sign another one afterwards. So I adapted to offer longer contracts by default. I'm sharing this with you because going back to my earlier points, right? Use your product management skills on this, right? How do you figure out pricing? And also remind yourself, like you are also like doing continuous product discovery here. You can adapt and change based on what you have to offer the customers that are attracted to you. And this is not like a fixing. There isn't, I don't think there is like a perfect answer. And if you got that, you got 100. Otherwise, like you are not gonna have a successful business. So yeah, a lot of this, like adopt that continuous product discovery mindset and see what works for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Vicky.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as like pricing and things like that, one of the things you run into is, well, you have to price knowing that you won't always be working 100% of the time, right? You're going to be putting in business development. So you're going to cost more than someone who they would pay a salary. And you have to be okay with giving that price. You have to be comfortable with it. They're going to say, oh, you're expensive. And you have to say, yeah, but I'm worth it. And with confidence and feeling good about it, because you'll get that. And if you constantly like, oh, okay, I'll charge you less, then you're selling yourself short, right? And that's not a way to do fractional work, right? So get comfortable with that. Another thing is when you've got multiple customers, sometimes you can use that for business development as well. Trying to help people, you want to help you want all of your customers to feel good when they're done, right? When you're done with the engagement, they felt good, they really got the value, you really helped them. You can sleep at night, you feel good about yourself too. Well, that has to do with letting them know, hey, I can help you, but I have this other thing going on. It's gonna take, I can't really start until this time. But that also helps with business development, because when you start trying to negotiate when your availability is and how much time you can give them, that kind of drives the urgency of locking in your time when you're available. So, yeah, you don't want to have too many customers at the same time, because then they're going to have a bad experience and that reflects poorly on you. So use that as a business development tool to make sure that you're filling your time. And there'll be downtimes as well. I mean, like right now, I'm a little bit down. I have more time, right? So I use that for other things. Like I've got a company going on the side, and when I'm not doing this, I'm working on a product company that I'm working on with a couple of other people, right? So as far as dividing up your mind share, which I think is what kind of led into this question, you have to be a really good multitasker to do this. If you're not good at multitasking and being able to switch your context very rapidly, you're not going to enjoy doing fractional work. You have to be good at it. You have to actually like it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the fact that maybe I've got ADHD or something. I enjoy the context switching. I think it's fun. It makes the day more interesting. It makes the day go more quickly. It's a little bit trickier on the calendar. Like I have multiple calendars, and keeping them all straight, that's just tough. You need to schedule your time in and be really good about it. But you need to enjoy the multitasking. And if you don't, I would encourage you, unless you can get large chunks of gigs, to stay away from fractional work.
And I've said that before, but even when you have one full-time job, typically you're also context switching within that job, unless you're very lucky and you work on one thing at a time. But that hasn't been my experience. I think with that, I would like to open it up for open questions. I think we've addressed some of the questions already in the chat, but if folks want to unmute, or as Vicky mentioned, seems a lot of people who are already doing their own independent work.
I know.
Unmute and share their experience or anything
Yeah.
questions that they have. Any takers? Nice.
Yeah, I have a question, everyone. Thanks for this. It's been great. Yeah, I have quite a bit of product management experience just in like kind of financial services, but I wouldn't say I'm really ready to launch my own personal consulting venture. But I have a lot of availability for, gig work myself. So I guess, do you guys sometimes have clients that require more of your time than you could provide, or do you find times when you have to scale when you have too much client work coming in? Like, is there sort of a marketplace for gig work like this for someone like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My a couple of weeks ago, I needed to put together a proposal. The client knew like this was more work than I could take on. And they were like, can you quickly put together a team for this? And I knew people who are in similar positions would be really good, um, just a fit for the kind of challenge that we will need to tackle. So I would say, like, network with people who do independent work. I think there are many of these that come up, especially with larger companies, because like for one person, there's only so many hours that you can take on, and a team actually makes a better and more a stronger proposal for depending on the kinds of work. Some of the work you just one person want to keep all the context, but for others, it may actually be really, really useful.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. So primarily kind of word of mouth connections. Yeah. More so than postings and things like that, obviously, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. People have to know you. Like if I'm pulling in another product coach for a contract, I like last time I pulled in someone I have worked with before because I knew like I could trust their work. Or you want to have some credibility in there.
Thanks, Vicky. Alex, I think it's Alex. I see your hand. Go ahead.
Alex, thank you. So a couple of things, what Vicky had just talked about in regards to having other people that you've worked with in the past, but they sometimes take full-time jobs. And so your pool can really change and evolve. So there's sort of a need to constantly be aware of who's out there, what they're doing, and what their availability is. But also thinking what Jerry was saying about right now, he's at a point where he's working on a project right now with other for developing a product, and that it's feast or famine sometimes. And myself having had experience of running my own company and then get a consulting gig for 3 years that took up all my time. And it's like, shoot, I wasn't building my business though during that time. So I'm curious to know if anyone has any specific strategies that they use when their heads down on a project that could take a year, could take 2 years, could take 3 years to continue to build that business when you don't really have the capacity to take on any new business. How to Incline Business. Okay, this book has come back.
book.
Yes.
I'll give you the TLDR or whatever it is. You need to stay in contact with your contacts. You need to reach out. If you have some interesting article that you saw somewhere or online, text it to them, email it to them. And a lot of people, not like the 10 people you're closest to, but have a really large network of contacts that you keep up with regularly is important, even when your head's down in the full time. And that helps to keep you in the market. That helps to keep you aware of what's going on out in space. And of course, it's, typically if you're going to be doing this kind of work, you're a social person anyways. Like me, I'm a social person. I'm always reaching out to my contacts anyway. So it was natural. I read the book like, oh, this is good. This is what I do. So be social, continue to be social, even if your head's down with whatever you're doing. And helpful,
And like,
right? You want to be a helpful person.
absolutely. And also like if you are capable of working like 40 hours a week, like building your business development time in that. I had to make a pretty tough decision earlier on when a company asked basically for 40 hours of my week. And that's more than 40 hours, as you would know, with additional time, you checking emails or whatever, responding to chats. And even though I think that could be a really good like short-term win for me, it would have been a pretty bad long-term strategy for me because I was so early in the process. I really didn't know much about the business side. I wanted to just like learn more. So I opted for like a um, different contract that was a shorter amount of less of my bandwidth. So I think like as a business owner, you have to think about it. Like your business development is part of your business. And so how you budget that time as you plan out your work is very, very crucial.
No, I agree with you. I think sometimes it can be very attractive to have something that's going to be long-term and going to be
Yeah,
full-time and et cetera. But if you do that, your business does sacrifice in
right,
regard to
right,
business development.
right.
Great. I think this is a great place to stop. I want to give another like very big shout out to all of our panelists for taking time out of their day and sharing their expertise with us today. For those who registered, you'll receive a follow-up email with a recording of this call and then a link to a survey. We would love to hear your feedback around this event and any future topics you'd like us to cover. I'll also put it in the chat if people want to pick up the survey link now. But otherwise, thank you everyone and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.